Would you give your life for Sir Keir Starmer? I think I know the answer. 500,000 men did just that for Winston Churchill in the 1940s in his battle against European fascism. But I don't think there's a single Brit who would feel stirred to take up arms on behalf of a bland, globalist, ex-human rights lawyer who takes the needs of the latest woke cause. A man who is on record as saying he prefers the unelected elite billionaires and technocrats of Davos over the home of his own democracy, Westminster. And things are set to get a whole lot worse as Starmer proudly announces that he's ready to put British troops in Ukraine. That's right, he's ready and willing to put troops on the ground in Ukraine. And given that an under pressure Starmer has made this announcement in the Conservative supporting Telegraph newspaper and not the Labour Party's in-house newsletter, The Guardian, this is not about enforcing the terms of any peace deal, as he claims. This is a political pivot to prop up his ailing premiership. Just as he ran around during the pandemic holding those ridiculous emergency press conferences calling for extra lockdowns, so this latest manoeuvre is about appearing statesmanlike. Starmer, a great leader on the world stage. It's nothing more than a look. It's a flex. It's cosmetic. It is optics from the king of the photo op. Ludicrously, his article in The Telegraph, a paper that he ought to despise, but we know he's got no principles, is accompanied by a photograph of him dressed up in a camouflage bomber jacket. Was that part of his spending spree, courtesy of fat cat Labour donor Lord Ali? Did he spot that camo jacket whilst zooming around TK Maxx in between splashing out on suits and spectacles? And splashing the cash is the wider problem here, given that this country has already committed to sending Ukraine £3 billion a year for the rest of the decade. This whilst homeless veterans sleep rough on our streets, where burglaries go uninvestigated, where car theft and knife crime are considered the norm, and where getting a GP appointment or, God forbid, a decent school place for your kids is like winning the lottery. Putin's illegal invasion of Ukraine was a horror, a nightmare and a disgrace. It's deeply reassuring that Donald Trump, who we've been told for the last 4 years is extremely bad, looks to be the world leader who will achieve a peace breakthrough based upon the common sense realization that Russia is quite a bit bigger of a country and a military power than Ukraine, and therefore they were never going to win. Now, the deal's got to be fair. It's got to involve Russia, the US, and Ukraine, and it can't be a sellout. But it's also got to be sensible, realistic, and it's got to last. A satisfactory settlement between Zelensky and Putin won't need Starmer's needless proposed bloodshed that no one voted for. Russia's concerns about the expansion of NATO in the east are not unreasonable, and for Western allies to intervene directly in the current conflict would lead to World War III and a likely nuclear Armageddon, which I don't love. But it's amazing, isn't it, how many of those on the left across the West seem unhappy with Trump's dynamic leadership. It seems like they want Ukraine to be the forever war, with more tragic loss of life for the foreseeable. For example, the hopeless Kamala Harris didn't once mention ending the war in Ukraine during that presidential election campaign. Trump, of course, was a stuck record about it, but Trump is a bad man. Do keep up. Now, on the financial cost of Starmer's promises, the British public did not vote for £3 billion a year to go to Ukraine for the foreseeable future, as this country runs an eye-watering deficit in which more goes out than comes in every month. And we certainly didn't vote for young men and women to risk their lives in this hellish war zone so that Keir Starmer can pretend to be G.I. Joe or Action Man. Let's have a look at his actions, shall we? Tanking the economy. Last summer, we were top of the G7 for economic growth, now effectively in recession. With the papers reporting today that a quarter of UK businesses are now planning layoffs and redundancies. So much for the party of working people, who will now be out of work thanks to this egregious administration. Starmer said he was going to smash the criminal gangs responsible for the illegal boat crossings, but as Nigel Farage points out on X this week, a further 25,000 people have entered the country since Starmer came to power. So, protect the Ukrainian border at huge financial and human cost, whilst ours remains open. Make it make sense. How ironic that our contribution to Ukraine of £3 billion a year is exactly the same figure that we pay annually to accommodate people in hotels who have breached the UK border via the Channel. And how ironic that European leaders like Starmer should be so focused on security abroad at the expense of security at home, just days after a failed asylum seeker drives a car into an assembled crowd in Munich, and weeks after Christmas markets across the West were targeted by people on our shores who detest our values and our traditions. Starmer is typical of most European leaders who have clearly lost touch with the public, with their focus on global issues and the supposed upholding of Western values, all whilst trashing them at home, with critics of government policy being accused of misinformation, with people thrown into jail for an unkind Facebook post, or with any comments by the public that don't fit the established woke narrative labelled hate speech. Take a listen to this catastrophic interview on 60 Minutes, a US news talk show, where a trio of European technocrats show their true colours.
Is it a crime to insult somebody in public?
Yes.
Yes, it is.
And it's a crime to insult them online as well?
Yes.
The fine could be even higher if you insult someone in the internet.
Fascinating remarks that they made in that clip. Meanwhile, US Vice President J.D. Vance lambasts European leaders over free speech, democracy and the rule of law the day after the aforementioned tragedy in Munich.
I believe there is nothing more urgent than mass migration. It's the result of a series of conscious decisions made by politicians all over the continent and others across the world over the span of a decade. We saw the horrors wrought by these decisions yesterday in this very city. No voter on this continent went to the ballot box to open the floodgates to millions of unvetted immigrants. I just think that people care about their homes, they care about their dreams, they care about their safety and their capacity to provide for themselves and their children. And they're smart. A couple mountains over in Davos, the citizens of all of our nations don't generally think of themselves as educated animals or as interchangeable cogs of a global economy.
This is the vice president of a country and an administration which is seeking to end the war in Ukraine, to end the misery, to end the suffering, the damage, the casualties as swiftly as is humanly possible. Meanwhile, our warmongering Prime Minister, in a bid to save his own political skin, wants to send innocent young British troops into the line of fire. Now, Starmer argues that this would be about keeping peace on the border to Russia following a deal. But the issue is that that peacekeeping would be on the border of Russia, which has the third biggest military arsenal on the planet. Good luck with that. Once again, Starmer is putting international rather than national interests first. And it's ordinary Brits who will shoulder the financial and human cost. If Starmer wants to play general, he should start by winning the war on Britain's streets. He might dress the part, but no amount of camouflage can hide Starmer's real motives. He thinks he's Winston Churchill, but he's not even fit to light his cigar. Thank you so much for watching. To join my media revolution, to watch ad-free content, to have live videos in which you can contact me directly, plus written journalism and so much more, head over to my Substack at markdolan.com. See you there.